For a long time, The Housemaid lived in a very specific category of books, the kind you start casually and then suddenly realize it's 2 a.m. and you can't stop reading. So when it was announced that The Housemaid was being adapted into a film starring Sydney Sweeney, expectations were instantly high. Readers wanted to know one thing above all else. Would the movie capture the tension, manipulation, and slow psychological unraveling that made the book so unsettling? The answer depends on how closely you think an adaptation should mirror its source. Because while the movie version of The Housemaid follows the broad strokes of the novel, the experience of the story changes dramatically when you move from page to screen. And that difference is where things get interesting. At its core, The Housemaid is about Millie, a woman with a past she's desperately trying to outrun. In the book, we meet her at a point of extreme vulnerability. She's recently out of prison, living out of her car and grasping for stability. When she lands a live-in housekeeping job at a wealthy home, it feels less like luck and more like survival. From the very beginning, the book places us directly inside Millie's head. We don't just see what she does, we hear what she thinks. Her self-doubt, her fear of being exposed, her constant calculation of how to appear normal enough to stay employed. That internal narration is one of the book's strongest tools because it makes the tension feel claustrophobic. The house itself quickly becomes a character. In the novel, the layout of the home, especially the locked attic room Millie sleeps in, reinforces the power imbalance. She is physically separated, hidden away, and reminded daily that she does not belong to the same world as the family she serves. The movie keeps the attic room, but it doesn't linger on it the same way. On screen, the space is unsettling, but it's no longer symbolic in the same layered way. In the book, that attic represents confinement, secrecy, and erasure. In the film, it becomes more of a visual shorthand. Creepy, yes, but less psychologically suffocating. This is where the first major difference appears. The book is slow and internal. The movie is faster and external. In the novel, Nina, the woman of the house, is written as erratic, volatile, and emotionally cruel. Through Millie's perspective, Nina feels unpredictable, almost unhinged. Her mood swings, manipulations, and passive-aggressive behavior create a constant sense of unease. The book wants you to believe Nina is the villain, and for a long time, you do. The movie still portrays Nina as unstable, but it softens her edges. Some of her cruelty is toned down, likely to make her behavior feel more grounded and less overtly abusive. This changes the tone of the story in subtle but important ways. In the book, you're trapped with Nina. In the movie, you're observing her. That shift makes the experience less intimate, and in some ways, less disturbing. Another major difference is how Millie herself is portrayed. And in the book, Millie is deeply unreliable. Not because she lies, but because she withholds. Her internal narration constantly reminds the reader that she's hiding something, and the tension builds around what that something might be. The movie version of Millie, played by Sydney Sweeney, is more emotionally accessible from the start. Her vulnerability is visible, her fear is readable, and her secrets feel closer to the surface. That makes her sympathetic, but it also removes some of the mystery that fuels the book. The novel thrives on uncertainty. The film leans into empathy, and that choice reshapes how the twists land. Speaking of twisting up, this is where the adaptation makes its boldest changes. Without spoiling specifics, the book's biggest reveals work because they are internal realizations before they are external actions. When the truth comes out on the page, it feels like a psychological snap, a moment where everything recontextualizes at once. In the movie, those same twists have to be visualized. That means they arrive more suddenly with less buildup. Some of the slow dread that makes the book so effective is sacrificed in favor of pacing and clarity. The film wants you to understand what's happening immediately, while the book wants you to sit in discomfort longer. Neither approach is wrong, but they deliver very different emotional payoffs. Now, let's talk about what the movie leaves out. One of the most noticeable omissions is the depth of Millie's isolation. In the book, she is constantly monitoring herself, afraid that one wrong move will expose her past. Her fear of authority, her paranoia about being discovered, and her internal moral conflict are all deeply explored. The movie touches on these ideas, but it doesn't live inside them. This is a limitation of the medium. Film can show behavior, but it can't fully replicate the experience of being inside someone's thoughts without voiceover. And this movie largely avoids heavy narration. As a result, some of the book's most chilling moments, the quiet ones, lose their impact. The themes, however, remain largely intact. At its heart, The Housemaid is about power. Who has it? Who pretends not to? And how easily it shifts when people underestimate each other. The book explores class disparity relentlessly. Millie's lack of money, security, and social standing makes her easy to control. The family's wealth gives them plausible deniability. Their cruelty is masked by politeness and luxury, The movie presents this theme visually through production design and performance, but it doesn't interrogate it as deeply. The social commentary is there, but it's quieter. Another major theme is female rage, particularly the kind that's ignored until it becomes dangerous. In the book, anger simmers beneath nearly every interaction. It's repressed, redirected, justified, and denied. The story asks uncomfortable questions about what happens when women are pushed into silence for too long. The movie acknowledges this, but again simplifies it. What the film gains in accessibility, it loses in psychological depth. And that's ultimately the trade-off. The book is unsettling because it forces you to question your own assumptions. The movie is unsettling because it shows you something disturbing, but then moves on. By the time both versions end, you're left with very different feelings. If you love the book, the movie might feel like it skimmed the surface of something darker. If you're new to the story, the movie may serve as a compelling entry point that doesn't demand the same emotional endurance. And maybe that's the point. Some stories are meant to be felt slowly. Others are meant to be experienced quickly. The Housemaid manages to exist as both, but it asks different things of you depending on how you encounter it. Now, we're officially entering spoiler territory, Makamunai, because to really understand the difference between the book and the movie, we have to talk about what actually happens beneath the surface. In The Housemaid, the biggest twist isn't just that Millie isn't as innocent as she appears, it's why she's there. The book reveals that Millie didn't stumble into this job by chance. She chose it. She researched the family. She positioned herself deliberately. Her past isn't just a shameful secret. It's a weapon she's learned how to control. On the page, this realization lands slowly and violently. Everything you thought you knew about Millie flips. The fear you felt for her turns into something more complicated. Admiration, discomfort, and a dawning awareness that she's been quietly reclaiming power the entire time. The movie, however, softens this revelation. In the film adaptation starring Sydney Sweeney, Millie's agency is still there, but it's less calculated and more reactive. The movie frames her actions as survival rather than strategy. She responds to danger rather than orchestrating her escape with long-term intention. That choice fundamentally changes the story. In the book, Millie is dangerous because she plans. In the movie, Millie is dangerous because she's pushed, and that difference matters. Another major spoiler-heavy shift is how Nina is handled. In the book, Nina's cruelty is not just personality, it's performance. She is playing a role. Her instability is exaggerated, weaponized, and carefully maintained as a shield. When that truth comes out, it reframes her behavior not as chaos, but as control. The book forces you to confront how easily we accept a woman's emotional volatility as inherent rather than strategic. The movie hints at this, but doesn't fully sit in it. On screen, Nina's manipulation is revealed more quickly and more clearly. The ambiguity that makes the book so unsettling, the constant second-guessing of who's telling the truth, is reduced for clarity and pacing. The result is a cleaner twist, but a less haunting one. Then there's the attic. In the book, the attic room is not just creepy, it's dehumanizing. Millie is literally placed above the household like an afterthought, hidden away, locked in, and controlled. The physical confinement mirrors her social and psychological confinement. The movie shows us the attic, but it doesn't make us live in it. We don't spend enough time there to feel the erosion of identity the book so carefully builds. On screen, it's a disturbing setting. On the page, it's a slow suffocation. And finally, the ending. The book's ending is cold, calculated, and deeply unsettling. Millie doesn't just escape, she wins. But her victory isn't framed as heroic. It's framed as inevitable. She has learned the rules of power, and she plays them better than anyone else in the house. The movie's ending is more emotionally satisfying and morally digestible. It gives the audience resolution rather than unease. You leave the theater feeling like justice was served. The book leaves you wondering who justice actually belongs to. And that brings us to the inevitable question. Was the book better? The honest answer is, it depends on what you want from the story. If you value psychological depth, unreliable narration, and the slow burn of realizing you've been misled, the book is stronger. It's more uncomfortable, more morally ambiguous. Doesn't care if you like Millie by the end. If you value performance, visual tension, and emotional accessibility, the movie delivers. It streamlines the story, clarifies motivations, and gives you a version of Millie you can root for without questioning yourself too much. The book challenges you, the movie reassures you, and neither approach is wrong, they're just aimed at different experiences.